You see that look in their eyes? That shift that happens when they realize you're not the person they thought you could manipulate anymore? That's the moment your shadow starts doing talking. Let me tell you something that nobody wants to admit, but everyone secretly knows. There comes a point in every person's journey where respect dies and something far more primal takes its place. Fear. Raw, undeniable fear. And I'm not talking about the kind of fear that comes from threats or aggression. I'm talking about the fear that radiates from someone who has finally embraced their darkness, integrated their shadow, and stopped pretending to be palatable for a world that never respected their kindness in the first place. You tried being nice, didn't you? You tried being understanding. You tried giving people the benefit of the doubt, extending grace, offering second chances, third chances, endless chances. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You stayed quiet when you should have spoken. You bent when you should have broken them. And what did it get you? Disrespect, betrayal, people walking all over you like you were a doormat with a welcome sign. They took your kindness for weakness. They mistook your patience for stupidity. They assumed your silence meant you were afraid. They were wrong, because something happens when you finally stop trying to be liked and start demanding to be respected. Something shifts in your energy, in your presence, in the way you move through the world. Your shadow, that dark part of yourself you've been suppressing, that ruthless voice you've been ignoring, finally gets permission to speak. And when your shadow does the talking, people listen. Not because they want, because they have to. This is what they don't teach you about power. Real power doesn't come from being loved. It doesn't come from being popular. It doesn't come from making everyone comfortable. Real power comes from being willing to make people deeply uncomfortable with who you become. When respect dies, it's not a tragedy. It's a liberation. Because respect was always conditional anyway. It was always based on you playing a role, fitting into a box, behaving in ways that made other people feel safe and superior. But fear is unconditional. Fear doesn't care if they like you. Fear doesn't need their approval. Fear just exists in the space between who you were and who you become. It lives in the shadow you cast when you finally stand at your full height instead of shrinking to make others comfortable. Your shadow is everything you've suppressed, every truth you didn't speak, every boundary you didn't enforce. Every time you swallowed your rage and smiled instead. Your shadow is the accumulation of every moment you chose peace over power. And now your shadow is done being silent. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in real life. You walk into a room and the energy changes. Not because you're trying to intimidate anyone. Not because you're putting on some fake tough guy persona. But because people can sense that something fundamental has shifted in you. They can feel that you're not seeking their validation anymore. They can sense that you're not afraid of their judgment. They recognize, on some primal level, that you've crossed a threshold they're too cowardly to approach. You don't explain yourself anymore. You don't justify your decisions. You don't engage with disrespect by trying to prove you deserve respect. You simply exist in your power. And that existence alone communicates everything that needs to be said. Your shadow does the talking through your silence, through the way you hold eye contact just a second longer than is comfortable, through the way you say no without apology or explanation, through the way you cut people off mid-sentence when they're wasting your time with nonsense. This isn't cruelty. This is clarity. This isn't aggression. This is self-respect finally finding its voice. Because here's what nobody tells you. Nice people finish last, not because the world is unfair, but because nice people are usually lying. They're lying about how they really feel. They're lying about what they really think. They're lying about who they really are. And people can smell that lie. They can sense the incongruence between your words and your energy. And they exploit it. They push your boundaries because they know you won't enforce them. They disrespect you because they know you'll smile and take it. But when your shadow starts talking, the lies stop. The incongruence disappears. What you think, what you feel, and what you do become perfectly aligned. And that alignment is terrifying to people who are used to your fragmentation. They don't know how to manipulate someone who isn't hiding anything. They don't know how to exploit someone who has fully integrated their darkness. They don't know how to control someone who has stopped seeking their approval. So they fear you, not because you're threatening them, but because you're free. And freedom is the most threatening thing to people who are still imprisoned by their need to be liked. I want you to understand something crucial. This transition from respect to fear isn't about becoming a bad person. It's about becoming a whole person. It's about reclaiming all the parts of yourself you've been taught to suppress. Your anger? That's not something to be ashamed of. That's information. That's your psyche telling you that a boundary has been violated. Your ruthlessness? That's not cruelty. That's efficiency. That's you finally valuing your time and energy enough to cut away what doesn't serve you. Your darkness? That's not evil. That's depth. That's the rich soil where real power grows. Carl Jung said that we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your shadow isn't your enemy. Your shadow is the repository of your power that you've been too afraid to claim. When you were trying to earn respect, you were operating from a place of scarcity. You believed you needed to prove yourself worthy. You believed you needed to meet certain standards, behave in certain ways, earn your place at the table. But when respect dies and fear begins, you're operating from abundance. You know your worth. You don't need anyone to validate it. You don't need anyone to approve of it. You simply embody it. And the world rearranges itself accordingly. This is where most people get confused. They think embracing the shadow means becoming aggressive, mean or violent. They think it means burning bridges and alienating everyone around. Wrong. When your shadow does the talking, you become more precise, not more aggressive. You become more selective, not more isolated. You become more powerful, not more cruel. You simply stop tolerating disrespect. You stop accepting less than you deserve. You stop pretending that boundaries are negotiable. You stop lying to yourself and everyone else about what you will and won't accept. And people who are used to crossing your boundaries, who are used to taking advantage of your kindness, who are used to exploiting your need for approval, they experience this as aggression. They call you cruel. They say you've changed. They're right. You have changed. You've stopped being their victim. Let me tell you about the economics of respect versus fear. Respect is cheap. People will respect you as long as it costs them nothing. As long as respecting you doesn't interfere with their agenda, their comfort, their desires. But the moment respecting you requires them to sacrifice something they want, respect evaporates. It was always conditional. It was always transactional. It was never real. Fear, on the other hand, is expensive. Fear costs them something real. Fear means they have to modify their behavior. Fear means they can't just do whatever they want around you. Fear means there are actual consequences for disrespecting you. And because fear is expensive, it's also valuable. It's real. It's sustainable. It doesn't disappear the moment it becomes inconvenient. When your shadow does the talking, you're no longer in the business of earning cheap respect. You're in the business of establishing expensive fear. Not fear of violence or aggression, but fear of consequences. Fear of losing access to you. Fear of discovering what happens when they cross the line one too many times. This is the language of power. This is the currency of people who have stopped seeking approval and started commanding presence. Now, I need you to understand something. This message, this truth about embracing your shadow and letting fear replace false respect, is not popular. Most motivational content will tell you to be kind, be positive, visualize success, think good thoughts. That's fine for people who want to feel good, but you're here because you want to be powerful, and power requires you to integrate the darkness they tell you to suppress. If what I'm saying resonates with you, if you feel that recognition deep in your bones that this is the path you've been searching for, then I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now. Leave a comment below telling me what part of your shadow you're ready to let speak. And subscribe to this channel because the content I'm bringing you is not going to be available anywhere else. This isn't feel-good motivation. This is real power dynamics. This is shadow work. This is the dark truth about dominance that will separate you from the masses who are still playing nice and wondering why they keep losing. Like this video, comment below, subscribe, because your shadow is ready to start talking. And you need the guidance to let it speak with precision instead of chaos. Now let's go deeper. The moment your shadow starts doing the talking is the moment you stop explaining yourself. Think about that. How much of your life have you spent explaining your decisions, justifying your boundaries, defending your choices? Every explanation is a negotiation. Every justification is a plea for approval. Every defense is an admission that you believe they have the right to judge you. When your shadow speaks, it doesn't explain. It states. It declares. It simply is. I'm not available. I'm not available because I have these other commitments and I'm really busy and I'm so sorry, but maybe another time. Just I'm not available. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. Watch what happens when you start communicating like this. Watch how people scramble to fill the silence you leave. Watch how they suddenly become more respectful because they realize you're not seeking their understanding or approval. Your shadow knows that explanation is weakness. Your shadow knows that people who truly respect you don't require justification. And people who don't respect you won't be convinced by any explanation you give anyway. So why waste your breath? Why dilute your power by trying to make them understand? Your shadow doesn't care if they understand. Your shadow only cares that they comply. This is what it means when fear replaces respect. Fear doesn't need understanding. Fear just needs acknowledgement. They don't need to understand why you've set a boundary. They just need to understand that the boundary exists and that crossing it has consequences. Let me tell you about consequences, because this is where most people fail. They set boundaries, but they don't enforce them. They make threats, but they don't follow through. They draw lines in the sand and then let people dance all over them. Your shadow doesn't bluff. Your shadow doesn't make idle threats. When your shadow does the talking. Every word is backed by the willingness to follow through. Someone disrespects you, they lose access to you. Not temporarily. Not until they apologize. Permanently. Because your shadow knows that apologies without changed behavior are just manipulation tactics. Someone violates your trust, they're cut off. No second chances. Now let's talk about it. No opportunity to explain. They're done. Because your shadow knows that people who violate your trust once will do it again. And you have better things to do than rehabilitate people who don't respect you. Someone tries to manipulate you, they get exposed. Not out of revenge, but out of protection. Your shadow knows that manipulators thrive in darkness. And the best way to neutralize them is to shine light on their tactics. This is the language of consequences. This is what makes fear real. Not the fear of what you'll say, but the fear of what you'll do. The certainty that you mean what you say and that there's no negotiating your boundaries. And here's the beautiful part. Once people understand this about you, once they truly internalize that your boundaries are non-negotiable and your consequences are guaranteed, most of them will fall in line. The ones who don't, they remove themselves from your life. And that's not a loss. That's a purification. That's your shadow doing the work of clearing out the people who were never meant to be in your inner circle anyway. You see, when respect was your goal, you try to maintain relationships with everyone. You try to be diplomatic to find common ground, to make it work even when it clearly wasn't working. But when fear is the reality, you understand that not everyone deserves access to you. In fact, most people don't. Most people are energy vampires, emotional terrorists. Boundary pushers will take everything you give and ask for more. Your shadow knows this. Your shadow has been trying to tell you this for years. But you ignored it because you were too busy trying to be the bigger person. Trying to take the high road. Trying to earn respect from people who were never going to give it. Well, the high road is crowded with people who got walked all over. Your shadow is inviting you to take a different path. A darker path. A lonelier path. But also a more powerful path. Because when your shadow does the talking, you're no longer concerned with being liked by many. You're focused on being respected by few and feared by those who dare disrespect you. Quality over quantity. Depth over breadth. Real power over fake popularity. This is the economics of the shadow. This is the return on investment when you stop trying to be everyone's friend and start being your own protector. Let me address something that might be bothering you right now. You might be thinking, but isn't this just becoming cold? Isn't this losing your humanity? Isn't this turning into the kind of person you used to despise? No, and here's why. The people you used to despise, who were cold and ruthless, they were operating from ego. They were hurting people to feel powerful. They were being cruel for cruelty's sake. They were compensating for their own insecurity by dominating others. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what happens when your shadow does the talking. When you integrate your shadow, when you let that dark voice speak with precision and purpose, You're not trying to hurt anyone. You're not trying to prove anything. You're not compensating for anything. You're simply protecting yourself. You're simply enforcing boundaries. You're simply refusing to participate in your own diminishment. There's a massive difference between cruelty and boundary enforcement. Cruelty seeks to harm. Boundaries seek to protect. Your shadow isn't interested in hurting people. Your shadow is interested in ensuring that people can't hurt you. And if that makes them uncomfortable, if that makes them fear you, that's on them. That's their recognition that they can no longer exploit you. That's their awareness that the game has changed and they're no longer playing against someone who's willing to lose. This brings me to one of the most important truths about shadow work. Your shadow isn't asking you to become someone else. Your shadow is asking you to become more fully yourself. All those thoughts you've been censoring, those are yours. All those feelings you've been suppressing, those are yours. All that rage you've been swallowing, that's yours. Your shadow is a collection of everything authentic that you've been hiding because you were afraid it would make you unlovable, unemployable, unacceptable. But what if being acceptable was never the goal? What if being authentic was always the answer? When your shadow does the talking, you stop performing, you stop pretending, you stop modulating yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for someone like you anyway. You become unapologetically yourself. And that authenticity, that raw truth, that refusal to hide your edges, is what creates fear in people who are still wearing masks. They fear you because you're free. They fear you because you stopped playing the game they're still enslaved to. They fear you because your very existence challenges the lie they're living. And their fear? That's not your problem. That's their invitation to do their own shadow work. But most of them won't. Most of them will stay comfortable in their inauthenticity. And they'll resent you for having the courage they lack. Let them. Your shadow doesn't need their approval. Your shadow doesn't need their understanding. Your shadow only needs your permission to finally speak the truth you've been holding back for years. Now we're entering the final phase of this understanding. The phase where you have to make a choice. You can go back to seeking respect. You can return to being nice, being accommodating, being the person everyone likes but nobody truly fears. You can suppress your shadow again, push it back down. Pretend that kindness without boundaries is a virtue. Or you can move forward into the reality where your shadow does the talking. Where fear replaces false respect. Where your presence alone communicates that you are not to be trifled with. This choice will determine everything about your future. Your relationships, your career, your self-image, your legacy. Choose respect. And you'll spend your life performing for an audience that will never be satisfied. Trying to earn something that was never real in the first place. Choose fear, and you'll spend your life in your power, surrounded by fewer people but real people. People who understand that you are not a doormat, not a victim, not someone who can be manipulated or controlled. I know which path I chose. I know which path every truly powerful person throughout history has chosen. The question is, which path will you choose? Because your shadow is ready. Your shadow has been ready. Your shadow has been waiting for you to finally give it permission to speak. All you have to do is stop silencing it. Stop apologizing for it. Stop pretending it doesn't exist. Let your shadow do the talking. Let fear replace false respect. Let people finally see who you really are when you're not trying to make them comfortable. And watch how your entire world transforms. Watch how the weak fall away and the strong gravitate toward you. Watch how opportunities appear because you're no longer wasting energy on people who don't deserve it. Watch how your own self-respect skyrockets because you're finally being honest about who you are and what you will not tolerate. This is the path of the shadow. This is the way of real power. This is what happens when you stop seeking approval and start commanding presence. Your shadow is talking. The only question is, are you finally ready to listen? Before we close, I need something from you. If this message has awakened something in you, if you recognize the truth in these words, if you're ready to let your shadow finally speak, then prove it. Subscribe to this channel right now. This is where you'll find the continued guidance for this journey. This is where the real work happens. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and commit to this path. Comment below and tell me, what has your shadow been trying to tell you that you've been ignoring? Share your truth. This community is built on people who are done pretending and ready to embrace their power. Subscribe now. Your shadow has been waiting long enough. The world doesn't need more nice people. The world needs more people who have integrated their darkness and learned to wield it with precision. The world needs more people whose shadows do the talking. The world needs you to stop hiding and start dominating. Subscribe, comment, commit. Your transformation starts now.